This is CBC Vancouver News.
Easter for me, I spend it every year. Coming here, it means a lot to me.
Tonight on CBC Vancouver News, a hot Easter meal in the midst of another day of encampment clearing along Vancouver's downtown east side. Also, heavy rain, wind and storms pummel across parts of BC for the Easter long weekend. And after 44 years, the host of The Nature of Things, David Suzuki, signs off. So we say thank you to David. Good evening, I'm Zahra Premji, and thanks for joining us tonight. The Union Gospel Mission's 33rd annual Easter meal had a more somber undertone this year. As Janella Hamilton explains, the celebration comes just days after the city started dismantling tents and encampments along East Hastings.
Hundreds of people lined up in the pouring rain waiting to get inside the UGM for its annual Easter meal, ready to fill their plates with heaps of ham, scalloped potatoes, vegetables, and apple pie for dessert. For some, like Michael Peterson, it's a feeling of safety and security amid growing unrest in the downtown East Side neighborhood.
There's a lot of hopelessness and horror stories, and there's a lot of agitated, frustrated, upset people.
He says it's exhausting bouncing between living on the streets and in shelters, and during times of instability, safe, supportive spaces and an Easter celebration like this is crucial.
If you didn't have that support going through what I'm going through as a financially desperate and homeless person or an opiate-addicted homeless person, like we'd be face down in the gutter searching for our broken vodka bottle because we just felt hopeless.
Staff and volunteers hoping to combat that hopelessness with a helping hand.
Easter for me, I spend it every year. Coming here.
He's just one of nearly 2,500 people turning to the mission for a hot, home-cooked meal.
We see Easter as a time of hope, and so the significance for us today is hopefully that we can give people that for a few hours today. Maybe even connect with somebody that can help them move on from the circumstances that they're currently in.
This annual meal comes at a difficult time for residents who call the streets of the downtown East Side home. Saturday saw a fourth day of city workers continuing to clear remaining tents and structures. The city's latest decampment sparking criticism online. Vancouver's former mayor expressing his concern that Vancouver is losing its humanity.
What we need is housing, we need places for people to go, we need it to be safe, we need it to be secure, we need it to be a place with dignity, and unfortunately those places don't exist right now.
Peterson says he's grateful to be surrounded by others this holiday weekend among a renewed sense of hope and humanity. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, this struggle is being felt across the country. One of Canada's largest food banks says it's at a breaking point. The Daily Bread Food Bank says it's not the only organization helping people in need that's seeing a spike in demand, especially over the Easter holiday weekend. CBC's Ethel Musa has more.
These volunteers at the Daily Bread Food Bank warehouse in Toronto are spending part of their Easter weekend packing up food boxes. They'll soon be delivered to food banks across the city to help keep them stocked. The organization says the need is greater than ever, and it's only getting worse.
52% of individuals who come to food banks have a post-secondary education. They went to school, they got a job, and now they are still having to be dependent on food charity.
Spirit Patullo says rising food prices and the high cost of rent has forced them to turn to food banks for help, and they're not alone.
I make use of the food bank possibly once a month. The price of food is just quite ridiculous, especially since I'm on government assistance.
The Daily Bread Food Bank says they had more visits last month than at any other time in the charity's 40-year history. It's not the only organization helping vulnerable Canadians that's seeing an increased need.
People are phoning us and saying they can't afford to eat.
Meals on Wheels says high food prices and the end of government COVID subsidies has quadrupled the cost of the hot meals the organization delivers to the needy.
We're disappointed in the response of our funders that they're not taking inflation into account, and they're essentially dropping these clients at a time of great need.
The federal government has introduced a new one-time grocery rebate for low-income earners. It says that will help put up to an extra $467 into the pockets of a family of 4 and up to $234 for a single person. But the Daily Bread Food Bank says more needs to be done to help those struggling to put food on the table. They want to see people on social assistance receive an extra emergency top-up tied to food inflation to better cope with the high cost of groceries. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it's no secret this holiday weekend has been a washout for many British Columbians. The South Coast could see up to 150 millimeters of rain by the end of the weekend. CBC's Michelle Morton tells us how the spring melt is adding to concerns about flooding.
Spring is off to a soggy start here on the south coast of British Columbia. Environment Canada says some areas could see a whopping 150 millimeters of rain by Sunday night. The agency has issued several special weather statements and warnings for the holiday weekend. Wind and rain warnings were issued for parts of the south coast, Vancouver Island, along the Sunshine Coast and Haida Gwaii, as well as the Kootenay region. Meteorologists say it's not unusual to see a spring rain event like this. Their main concern is flooding because of the beginning of the spring melt on the mountains. They say the heavy rain combined with that snow melt could cause flooding in some low-lying areas. A high stream flow advisory has also been issued for the south coast and Vancouver Island, with the rain set to raise water levels in rivers. Though weather has disrupted travel, officials are warning people to stay off the roads, and if they are driving, to be cautious and to carry emergency kits. And BC Ferries has canceled some sailings. Sports fans also took a hit because of the wet weather. The Vancouver Canadians have had to postpone their season opener twice. They're hoping better weather will prevail by Sunday afternoon, but given the forecast, they might have to push it back yet again. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, Drive BC is also warning intense spring storm is set to hit a 150-kilometer stretch of Highway 1 between Golden and Revelstoke. It says the storm is expected to peak on Monday and may require avalanche control, working affecting traffic in both directions. Now, Drive BC says a closure of up to 8 hours may be required to ensure traveler safety. All right, now with all the watches and warnings in place, let's take an early dive into what's happening in the world of weather tonight. Taking a look first at tomorrow's forecast, it's looking like Prince George is sitting at 11 degrees, Prince Rupert 11, Williams Lake 12, 8 degrees for Port Hardy. You're the winner for the lowest temperature, but it is looking like it's going to be pretty rainy in all sections. Now let's take a look at this rainfall. Of course, we've just been talking about that. You see that green moving in, that means a lot of rain is coming in towards Vancouver, Victoria, the south coast. You can see a bit of snow, that purpley blue area. So it is looking like exactly what we've been hearing. It's going to be snowy and rainy for this rest of this Easter long weekend. Taking a look now at this 5-day forecast into the 7-day forecast. Well, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that rain is sticking around, but then Thursday, Friday, then Friday, Saturday is where you can see full-on sunshine. But hey, don't worry, tomorrow for your Easter Sunday, you still have 12 degrees for your day. So you don't have to bundle up, just have the hoodie on, have the umbrella handy, and make sure you stay dry. Monday looks like it's going to be around the same, but then when the rest of the week kicks in, it looks like the sun will start to try and show up, and then you know what? It's going to hang out Friday and Saturday. The Vancouver Police Department has announced some major changes to its policy around using handcuffs, but some advocates say the policy is lackluster at best.
What I actually assumed was just common sense is now needing to be written down as policy, and kind of a, reactionary and toothless policy, if I can say so. It doesn't actually really do anything to address the internal racism that is definitely alive and well inside of the VPD.
The police will require officers to take into account a person's age, ethnicity, and the seriousness of an alleged incident prior to applying handcuffs. It also says the handcuffing must be reasonable and proportionate to the danger the officer faces. The change in policy dates back to 2021 when this retired BC Supreme Court Justice Selwyn Romilly was arrested. He was 81 at the time, out for a walk and approached by 5 police officers and put in handcuffs. Police said they were looking for an assault suspect described as dark-skinned and 40 to 50 years old. Well, the family of a Vancouver Island man who was shot by police last month is in an induced coma now, and his family is calling on the police to take accountability.
I wish it was a nightmare and I would just wake up and he's beside me holding me, because none of this makes sense. That's not my Devin that was driving. I mean, these guys should be trained. I mean, he went right for the kill shot to the head. Like, I feel like, you know, they haven't even reached out to me.
Devin Cochrans was shot in the head twice by an officer on March 28th. This was after RCMP alleged he stole and drove a loaded skid steer through a Duncan neighborhood just after 9 p.m. Police say they tried to stop him but failed, and one of their cruisers was left badly damaged. The Independent Investigation Police watchdog is now looking into whether the shots were justified. Well, if you were banking on cashing in that tax rebate, it may be a little late this year. 35,000 unionized workers at the Canadian Revenue Agency have voted for strike action ahead of mediation talks later this month.
Our members at the Canada Revenue Agency started bargaining about a year ago. They've seen nothing but disrespect at the bargaining table, to the point where the Canada Revenue Agency didn't even put a wage offer on the table. So back in January, we decided that we would go out and take strike votes of our 35,000 CRA members, which we did. And as you said, they have given an overwhelming strike mandate to the bargaining team.
The bargaining unit finished voting yesterday to authorize a strike. The workers will be in a legal strike position starting on Friday, just weeks before the May 1st deadline for filing tax returns. The union is seeking wage increases, more flexibility for remote work, and improved job security. They've been without a contract for a year and a half. Well, disc golf has become one of the fastest growing sports in North America, according to the Professional Disc Golf Association. At least 10 million people play the sport. And as CBC's Corey Bullock reports, in one East Kootenay community, that growth can be seen across all age groups, including one dedicated group of seniors that has made it part of their daily routine.
It's a morning ritual. While most might greet the day with work or school, this group of seniors is getting together to play the game of disc golf. Every day, rain, snow, or shine. They're known as the chain rattlers.
What we're getting is a lot of fresh air, great exercise. It's stimulating in so many ways.
The group began playing 3 years ago. They picked up steam during the pandemic. And, according to the Professional Disc Golf Association, that's when the sport saw the most growth it's ever seen.
Well, it was growing steadily year after year, which was great. But the last 3 or 4 years, it's gone boom, and we're just doing everything we can to keep up with the growth. We have had as many people join the PDGA the last 2 years as we did in the first 40 years.
Brian Clarkson and his comrades share their skills with other seniors. They also teach clinics at the elementary schools in town. For most, it's a chance to spend time with friends and get some exercise.
Oh, the camaraderie is the best. How we build each other up, how we support each other, how we teach each other and point out things to each other.
I have an artificial hip. I've had it since '82. And I'm able to do this kind of thing. I think most seniors can do it, even if they have, a minor disability.
For others, it's a love of the game.
You can't just toss a frisbee, as like you say. You often have to shape the shot, and you have to do it very intentionally.
The group typically plays at Idlewild Park, one of 4 courses in Cranbrook. It's 18 holes and takes about an hour and a half to play. For the chain rattlers, it's home. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
All right, a reminder for drivers in Metro Vancouver for the rest of this long weekend, avoid Patullo Bridge. Now, the bridge remains closed in both directions until 5 a.m. on Tuesday morning. The closure is to allow for work on the replacement bridge project. Drivers are asked to use the Portman or Alex Fraser bridges instead. Well, after 44 years on CBC's The Nature of Things, David Suzuki said his on-air farewell to the show last night.
Before I say my final farewell and disappear into the oblivion, there are people that I would like to thank and acknowledge.
The Nature of Things is TV's longest-running science series. Suzuki began hosting in 1979, tackling subjects as diverse as bug sex, Roman genealogy, animal music, and the fight to preserve old-growth forests. Though he does go on, and the two new co-hosts will include Sarika Cullis Suzuki, David's daughter. Well, hundreds of families came together in Saanich for an annual tradition, an Easter egg hunt.
Anyone out there like chocolate?
Festivities included face painting and crafts, and of course, chocolate eggs. More than 400,000 of them, to be very specific. And it's all for a good cause. Funds raised will benefit BC Children's Hospital. Since 2005, the event has raised over $100,000. Now, for those sad about not being able to ride the Stanley Park train this Easter, don't despair. One of the most popular rideable miniature railways on the Lower Mainland has returned. Burnaby Central Railway brought back its beloved train for its 30th season. Let's hop aboard.
This is opening for our running season of the British Columbia Design Model Engineers. Run a miniature railway here in North Burnaby. And today we partnered with the Burnaby firefighters to come out to help us with some volunteers, because we're always looking for volunteers. We're a volunteer-run organization. We're also supporting the Burnaby Firefighters Charitable Foundation, which does a lot of good work in the community. Seeing how we've been over 30 years in the community, we thought it's really good that we have an opportunity to give back as well. It's our 30th anniversary being on this site, so that's we're super happy with that. It's a big milestone for us. We've also been as a club 94 years, so we're looking ready to our 100. Our big thing is volunteers. People get off the train smiling. We're happy. If they're 1 year old, if they're 70 years old and get off smiling, that's what we're here for.
Iranian authorities are setting up special security cameras monitoring for headscarf infractions. More on that story after the break. The abortion controversy reignited again yesterday in the U.S. A federal judge in Texas ordered a hold on a widely used abortion pill. And an hour later, a judge in Washington state made a competing ruling ordering that access to the drug be upheld in many states. CBC's Jamie Strachan has more.
This decision is clearly about ideology and politics.
There is a new fight raging in the United States over abortion rights. On Friday, a federal judge in Texas halted the Food and Drug Administration's approval of the abortion pill mifepristone, a drug used to terminate pregnancy in the first 10 weeks.
It's not about science and medicine, and by no stretch of the imagination does it take into account women's health care, doctors' safety, or clarity. And it is not something that I ever believed I would see in my lifetime.
In its court filing last year, the Alliance Defense Fund, a conservative legal organization, argued the FDA erred when it declared the drug safe and effective and gave it accelerated approval more than 20 years ago.
We are encouraged that the federal judiciary is finally taking a look at the approval of mifepristone and really holding the FDA to account.
The FDA argued its approval relied on multiple clinical trials involving thousands of patients. Since FDA approval in 2000, the pill has been used by more than 3 million women in the U.S. The judge in Texas put the ban on hold for 7 days to allow the Biden administration to appeal, which they have indicated they will do.
This is a drug that the FDA approved as safe 20 years ago and has been proven to be safe for 20 years. So this is a dangerous precedent.
Legal experts say this could potentially undermine the ability of the FDA to make science-based decisions.
The bottom line is it's just unprecedented for any group to go to one federal judge and say, overturn FDA approval of a drug.
The ruling comes less than a year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, leaving decisions around access to abortion in the hands of individual states. Since then, many states have greatly reduced access to abortions. If this ban sticks, doctors say there is another drug on the market, but it is slightly less effective in ending pregnancies. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, China has begun 3 days of military drills off Taiwan. The move follows last week's U.S. visit by Taiwan's president. State media released video. Taipei says 71 Chinese warplanes crossed the median line in the Taiwan Strait, but only briefly. Warships also took part. China's military says the exercises are a warning to independent forces in Taiwan and outside forces colluding with them. Similar exercises last August followed then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Iranian authorities say special security cameras are being set up to identify women violating the country's dress code. Women are widely seen without the mandatory headscarf, and resistance has grown in response to the controversial death last fall of Mahsa Amini. The new cameras are explicitly aimed at headscarf interactions. Business owners are also being urged to help enforce the code. Today's statement says ignoring the headscarf rule spreads insecurity and tarnishes Iran's spiritual image. All right, here is a time lapse of the sun shining over the Amphitrite Point Lighthouse in Ucluelet. We'll have your Canucks update after the break. Well, it was a big night for the Vancouver Canucks as they faced the Calgary Flames, marking several milestones.
But now Miller steals ahead to Pettersson. Short-handed breakaway. Elias Pettersson scores.
Superstar Elias Pettersson scored his 99th point for the season, a point away from being the 7th player in Canucks history to crack the 100 mark. It was also the final home game for Canucks 20-year color commentator John Garrett. Meanwhile, Canuck Cole McWard scored his first NHL goal tonight, and it was the 800th game for Canucks mascot Finn. The Canucks won 3-2 in a game that ended with a shootout. All right, that's your late news for this Saturday evening. Happy Easter to you. I don't know how you're celebrating. It's my grandfather's 93rd birthday. Happy birthday to him. Happy Easter to all of you. Now head over to our website, cbc.ca/BC, for one last scroll through what's making headlines before you let that head hit the pillow. Have a good night.